Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another draft guide. We're doing the Houston Texans today. If this is your first time watching this series, be sure to go check out the other ones. Like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to hop right in. I'm explaining my method very briefly. So first, we're looking at what picks the Houston Texans have today. They've got 28, 38, 59, and 69. Looking at the team needs, the Texans, I base this off of my own opinion and the consensus of a lot of other media outlets. Offensive tackle, interior offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, supplemental help at running back, and safety. We see here the red means they really need it, orange means they kind of need it, and yellow means they maybe need it. So we're going to get into where exactly we find each of these picks. I'm trying to hit 50% of them, and the way that I'm doing that is I'm picking 4 prospects per pick for the Texans to choose from. I hope that I get these right. I'm doing for every single team from pick 1 through 100. With the Texans, they've got 4 picks, so we'll be talking about 16 prospects today. And the way that I got to these 16 prospects is by tracking every single one of the NFL's team's visits on 30 visits, pro day meetings, private workouts, and interviews at the combine, combining that with team needs. So this is a very extensive process that I went through. I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to hop right in with, let me explain this as well. Sorry to get off track here. I also took my grades and combined them with the consensus of DraftBuzz, ESPN, CBS, NFL, and Pro Football Focus, grading each prospect 1 through 200. And that is how we're judging based off these selections. So with the Houston Texans, they could grab some. It's very unlikely, right, that they'll grab Fernando Mendoza. He's not going to be available at the end of the first round. I think we can all understand that, right? So maybe Caden Proctor, the 17th overall prospect's available. Would they consider taking him? We'll have to wait and see. Onto this list, I have some surprises for you. So let's go back here. Let's go to the team selections, and we will start with pick number 28. Pick number 28, the first prospect based off of visits and interest with team needs combined and prospect rankings. Caden Proctor is my number 1 choice here for the Houston Texans. I've seen Proctor graded as high as the 6th overall pick. I've seen multiple media outlets say that he might be a day 2 selection. In my opinion, I have him currently graded as my 21st best prospect. Would not be surprised if he drops all the way down here to the Texans. However, he does seem like probably the 3rd best offensive tackle in this draft, specifically left tackle. I don't know if he's going to make it here. There's a lot of other teams with needs at tackle like the Browns and the Lions that have multiple picks before the Texans. We'll have to wait and see if he falls there, but if he does, the Texans will 1,000% be selecting him. D'Amico Ryans, an Alabama guy, loves drafting Alabama players. Just ask Will Anderson, who has been phenomenal for the Texans. Now we go ahead and talk about that defensive line that the Houston Texans are looking to upgrade. Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle outside of Ohio State. Talked about this in another video, but I am not the biggest Caden McDonald fan. There's a lot of people that say he is a day 1 lock. I would not be shocked to see him go into day 2 and maybe see somebody else like Caleb Banks jump ahead of him. Now, that's kind of a hot take, I understand, in NFL draft conversations, but Caden McDonald, if he's available here with the Houston Texans, I absolutely think based off of the combine visits, interviews, and 30 visits, Caden McDonald is a guy that the Houston Texans are targeting. Now we go on to another offensive tackle. He, once again, is really graded as like a late day 1 pick, maybe day 2 pick. Would not be surprised if he falls all the way to the middle of the 2nd round, but I'm higher on him than most. Left tackle out of Utah, Caleb Lomu. He pairs with his teammate Spencer Fano, who is the 11th overall graded prospect in this draft. I like Lomu a lot. I think Fano kind of takes away from a little bit of his shine, or takes a little bit away from his shine. I am really confident that he could be a starting caliber offensive tackle. And then last but certainly not least, I really doubt that this guy will be here. Vega Ioane, I believe, is maybe how you pronounce that. I'm butchering it, and I apologize. We all know who I'm talking about. Offensive guard out of Penn State. Once again, kind of like Proctor, graded much higher than this, but offensive guard is not a premium position in NFL drafts. He's ranked as the 14th best prospect. Nobody has him really lower than 22. As you can see here, he's graded all the way up to 6 in the ESPN draft. I saw somebody say ideally the Arizona Cardinals would select him at 3. There's just no shot in hell that happens. So Vega going to the Texans is probably not going to happen, but if he's available, I would absolutely think that the Texans would select him with their 28th overall pick. So quick recap for pick number 28, we've got Caden Proctor, Caden McDonald, Caleb Lomu, and last but not least, Vega Ioane. I think that that's a pretty tight draft there. It's unlikely that many of these players, probably 3 out of the 4 will probably get selected before pick 28, but Caleb Lomu being there, I definitely think the Texans would consider drafting him. Now we move on to pick 38. 38 is yet another one that I'm really curious to see how the Texans draft here. Once again, offensive line, creating depth and potential starters there is really the main focus from what I've seen based off reporting that the Houston Texans are going to try to improve. They already have a great defense. They are loaded in the wide receiver room, and there's not a lot of top-tier running backs in this draft class. So really want to see the Texans here draft some offensive linemen, and I've got some. Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon, I believe. He is I know that. He's out of Oregon. He is a really strong run blocker. Pass blocking could use a little bit of nuance, but as he goes with experience, I think he will absolutely get that. And then speaking of experience, probably the most experienced tackle in this draft, Blake Miller, offensive tackle out of Clemson. This guy is one of one in terms of the reps that he's gotten in college. I think he's probably the most polished offensive tackle in this class, but the conversations about the ceiling versus the floor is where he kind of falls. There's not really a lot left in his game to continue to develop, and that's why I think he's on the lower end of the tackle grade here. I do think he's probably the best or second best, maybe behind like Spencer Fano or Francis Mauigoa. In terms of like ready to start right now, Blake Miller could absolutely be that. So 2 offensive linemen there. Then we rotate right back to the defensive line. And I've talked about one of these guys a lot. We go to our prospect rankings, go over here to our defensive linemen. 2 defensive linemen here. Number 1 is Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech. There's not been a lot of postseason interest in Lee Hunter in terms of his combine interviews, his pro day attendees, and or his, his 30 visits. Lee Hunter has had a few, but not nearly as many as Christian Miller, who is graded just 1 spot behind Hunter. I think Miller will probably be drafted over Hunter if I had to guess. But honestly, I would say the Texans would probably draft Hunter before Miller. That's at least how I have it listed on my prospect list. Honestly, this is a complete toss-up, and I'm not going to try to sit here and tell you that for some reason Christian Miller has infinite more value than Lee Hunter does. As you can see here, not only does the overall rank say that, but the average rank is literally right there, side by side, 46 and 47. I like Miller a little bit more. Maybe I like Hunter a little bit more. I think I like Hunter a little bit more. Kind of going back. I'm really going back and forth on it. But to recap, pick 38, Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon, Blake Miller out of Clemson, Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, and Christian Miller out of Georgia. Now we go back to this and we see that the Texans have the 59th pick, their second round pick. And we go back to our prospect list and we answer, what do the Texans love to do? Draft and develop defensive players. And one guy with a lot of reps and could actually start in this league, in my opinion, day 1, but probably will not, especially if he gets drafted here, Keontae Scott out of Miami. Now, I actually fell in love with Keontae Scott when he was at Auburn. This guy is honestly one of one in terms of his aggression and playmaking abilities. I love what he has to offer. That pick 6 in the college football playoff was amazing. He really put his team in the game there. Miami goes on this run primarily because of Miami's defense, but a lot of credit goes to Keontae Scott. In that instance, ranked as the 52nd prospect, he might fall down to 59 if they do, or if he does, guarantee you the Texans will take him there. Now, I talked about a little supplemental help at running back. For some reason, a lot of people are saying Jadarian Price is going to be a late first-round selection. I just don't see it based off of the volume or lack thereof that he got in college. I don't think that he'll be an early day 2 pick. I would have to say he slips into the 40s and maybe into the late 50s. And if he's available there, the Texans will for sure draft him just because of the upside that he has to offer. In my opinion, if he falls to 59, that's an absolute steal. You see a couple places have him ranked as high as 32 on these prospect lists. I think Daniel Jeremiah has him ranked way too high in my opinion, but that's just me talking talk right now. So that's where I have Jadarian Price. If for some reason the Texans can possibly draft him, I think they absolutely would. Now we move on to wide receiver. Wide receiver, this is a guy who's had multiple interviews with the Texans, and I'm curious as to why they want to continue adding wide receiver pieces, but I cannot ignore the reporting that I've seen. Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, yet another SEC guy. We'll see what happens with this. I think he's got great playmaking ability, kind of plays that Jalen Waddle-esque number. He's more of a gadget guy, not a traditional route runner. Could the Texans use him? Absolutely. Just ask him after their offensive performance versus the Patriots in the playoffs. I'm sure that CJ Stroud would love to have this guy to be able to dump down looks to on screens and or jet passes as well. Zachariah Branch is a playmaker with the football. The problem is getting the football in his hands. Last but certainly not least, I talked about a brief need with linebacker for the Texans, and I definitely think Jake Goldie will be around this area. He's ranked 49th out of all of the prospects. I actually have him a little bit lower at 62. If other teams view him that way, he will 1,000% fall to the Texans there. A lot of these picks here at 59, I'm kind of stretching on a little bit. A lot of these are some reaches, but based off of other team needs, I do think one or more of these players will be here for the Texans to select. So to recap wholeheartedly or holistically, we get 59, Keontae Scott, Jadarian Price, Jake Galde, and Zachariah Branch. Those are my 4 prospects there. At pick number 69, we are going to go ahead and, let's go back and let's confirm. We've got pick number 69 in the 3rd round. We still haven't, in my opinion, addressed defensive line enough. I think if we go back to this defensive lineman category here, Dante Corleone, 72nd prospect, and that's pretty much where I have him. Mr. Corleone is an absolute unit. Didn't have the greatest year at Cincinnati on tape. Other players, kind of like Jake Galde, man, I keep mispronouncing his name, but I was very high on him going into the season, but other players like Jake stole the show, in my opinion, and went up the draft boards. Corleone definitely could have been a little bit higher here for me. We'll see what happens with that. I don't think that the Texans would target 3 defensive linemen if they weren't serious about taking one of them. So that's why I put Corleone on this list. Connor Lew, this is one of the only times that I see him on these lists. Centers and interior offensive linemen are really slept on in terms of value. Lew is my 70th overall graded prospect, and he is a pretty veteran center. I think he's got a lot of snaps under his count. I can absolutely see him being a starter in this league. Will he start right away with Houston? Maybe not, but that depth is key on this interior part of the offensive line. Now we go back to the tight end group. Now I understand Dalton Schultz is there, but depth there is unbelievably necessary. You need a guy that's willing to do it all, and Max Clare out of Ohio State is absolutely that. I believe he comes from Purdue, transferring into Ohio State. Had a really good year last season as a gadget guy, and I just 1,000% buy what he's selling. In terms of what the Texans need, Clare is that guy. Michael Trigg, not necessarily. Trigg is rated as the 88th overall prospect. I really haven't seen a lot of interest in him so far. I think he probably will slip into day 3. But Clare and Stowers are 2 guys that are really high-demand prospects right now. So I do think that they would be looking to draft Clare at 69. Last but certainly not least, I talked about running back help. Jadarian Price, like I said, will probably not be there at 59. A guy that I do think will be there at 69 is a guy that I'm way higher on than a lot of other people. It's Mike Washington, the running back out of Arkansas. I 1,000% believe in his game. He is a volume guy. He is extremely explosive. He has great acceleration, performed really well at the combine. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he will be a playmaker in the NFL. Do not get me wrong. Him not being a starter would not shock me, but him developing into a starter would absolutely be on the track that I have him on. So to recap that, pick number 69, we've got Dominique Orange. Did I actually say Dante Corleone? Guys, I severely apologize. Let me retract my statement. Dante Corleone was not who I was talking about. This was a complete mistype on my end. I want to revise and talk about Dominique Orange, the defensive lineman out of Iowa State. Completely my fault. That's who the Texans have been meeting with. This was a complete error on my part, and I take accountability for that. We will be better. But Dominique Orange, the defensive lineman out of Iowa State, I like him as well. Not as much as I like Corleone, but the Texans have been meeting with him and not Corleone for this selection. So my 4 prospects at 69, Orange, Connor Lew, Max Clare, Mike Washington. Those are my selections. Holistically, let's go ahead and do all 4 selections. So at 28, I've got Caden Proctor, Caden McDonald, Caleb Lomu, and Vega Ioane. At 38, I've got Emmanuel Pregnon, Blake Miller, Lee Hunter, Christian Miller. At 59, I've got Keontae Scott, Jadarian Price, Zachariah Branch, Jake Galde. And at 69, I've got Dominique Orange, Connor Lew, Max Clare, Mike Washington. That is going to do it for my Texans draft guide. They have a lot of opportunities here to continue to upgrade this team and try to push them closer to an AFC championship game. They're on the right track 100%. So guys, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out the other videos doing this draft guide and any other videos that I post as well. Be sure to check those out. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.